Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much again for being here. Today, unfortunately, we are gathered to talk about another tragic event that has occurred in the city of Aurora, and unfortunately has involved Aurora police officers. And that is the shooting that occurred last night at the Conoco gas station over on Havana Street. Before I get started on that, I want to make sure that everybody's aware, again, our commitment in this department is without question related to transparency. And transparency means sharing confirmed information as soon as that information is available. And today, that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear specific, verified information that's going to come in the sense of 911 calls, body-worn video, mesh camera footage, and other items that were seized at that actual event. Other details, again, on this event, they still remain under review, which I'll detail a little bit later. But we will release them as that information becomes more validated and also becomes confirmed. So again, I want to provide some clarity and some information on where we are right now in the officer-involved shooting that took place on September the 18th at 290 South Havana Street. This incident began when suspect himself called Aurora 911 at approximately 7:33. He told our call taker he had a loaded 9mm pistol in his pocket, and he had planned to shoot up the business and shoot up the individuals inside that business and all around that business. He also said that he wanted to shoot at the police when they responded. That information was immediately relayed to the responding officers. At 7:43, 3 officers arrived on scene. They came prepared with a tactical plan, which involved one armed with a rifle, one with a pistol, and one with a 40mm less lethal launcher. At 7:45 p.m., they approached the suspect from a position of cover, identified themselves, and ordered him to show his hands. The suspect ignored those commands and advanced towards the officers with one hand still concealed in his pocket. The officer, equipped with the less lethal launcher, fired multiple rounds. All of those rounds that were fired, we believe that they actually struck the suspect, but they had little to no impact or effect whatsoever. As a matter of fact, as the officers, seeing what was occurring, repositioned themselves and actually retreated back around the corner based upon the contact with the suspect actually increased his pace and now rapidly charged and chased the officers around that corner. While he did so, he still kept one hand concealed inside of his jacket. As he neared the officers, one of the officers discharged his pistol, striking the suspect. From first contact to the moment the shots were fired, it was approximately 15 seconds. At 7:47, officers immediately began life-saving measures and continued until medical personnel responded and arrived on scene. Unfortunately, the suspect was later pronounced dead at the hospital. It was later confirmed that the suspect did not have a firearm. However, what is factual and known at this point, and the very specific facts are, is that the suspect told 911 that he had a loaded handgun. He had planned to commit mass killings. He planned on killing police officers as they arrived. He failed to listen to officers. He failed to be deterred by the less lethals that were fired. He charged at officers, kept his hands concealed in his pockets, and ultimately he made furtive movements towards the officers upon coming on contact. This incident, and there is no getting around this incident is tragic for everyone involved, and I mean that sincerely, for everybody involved. I mean, it's tragic for the suspect, it's tragic for the people that were there that witnessed, it's tragic for the city of Aurora, it's also incredibly tragic for the officers that were involved in this. There's no positive in any aspect about this. But it's important to understand again that this event was set into motion by the suspect and his own actions. He made the 911 call, he threatened to commit mass violence, and he advanced on officers despite clear commands and also the use of less lethal munitions. What you're going to see today is all relevant audio, body-worn camera video, and mesh camera footage that's going to be released to the public. That has actually been released to the public. This information has also been released to the family as well. As with all officer-involved shootings, an independent investigation is underway. That's being handled by the 18th Judicial District, the DA's office.
And like I said at the very beginning, we may remain and we will always be committed to transparency. And that transparency comes in the form of the realization that we can release what we know factually. And this is the information that we know factually. There will be additional information that will come through the investigation. As I mentioned, the 18th Judicial is handling the criminal aspect of this. Aurora Police Department will be handling the internal aspect of this. But as more information becomes available from both of these events, we will ensure that information is released and the community is aware of exactly what occurred on this particular night. What I want to show you now, and we're going to go through some of the details on this. So again, as I was talking, you saw the timeline behind you. Now I'm going to start getting into some more specifics about what specifically happened and what we have at this time in the investigation. Again, I want to be very, very clear. There is still facts that we do not know about, and those facts are based upon the actual individuals involved in it. Those facts are based upon the officers that were interviewed or being interviewed still. That information, again, I am not going to speculate on the officer's perspective, his view, his opinion, but what we are going to do is give you information that we have that is tangible, that is real, that is something that we know factually is here and available. And I want that availability to be seen by everybody in the community. I also want it to be seen by the family, and I also want it to be seen by this organization itself. So what we have at 7:33, again, the suspect calls Aurora 911 and makes the following statement.
What happened?
I'm actually in here with a 9mm pistol. I'm about to shoot the place up, and the cops need to come here right away.
Okay, sir, can I have you exit the building?
No, I'm going to stay in here.
Okay. Is there a reason why you want to do this?
Honestly, I'm waiting for the cops to show up so I can just shoot at them.
Was there anything that led you to this place today? Anything going on?
No, not really. I'm just tired of the cops.
Okay, where's the gun right now?
In my left pocket.
Your left pocket?
Inside my sweatshirt.
Inside your sweatshirt, okay. Thank you. Have you approached anybody in the store at all?
Just asked for the address and a phone, that's about it.
Yes, okay. And I'm sorry, what kind of gun did you have again? Was that a 45 you said?
A 9mm?
9mm, okay. Is the gun loaded?
Yes.
It is, okay. Were any shots fired?
No, not yet.
So that again is the actual audio tape of the suspect who called into Aurora 911. At 7:36 p.m. again, a call is dispatched to our officers as a threat involving a weapon. And what you're going to hear now is that audio tape of what was actually dispatched to the Aurora police officers who responded to that event.
Anybody that can clue for this threat, 290-290 South Banner Street at Conoco. It looks like we have a caller on the phone stating that he has a gun and is going to shoot up the building. Also that he wants to shoot at police. He's using the business phone from this location to call. Anybody for that one?
Again, as mentioned earlier, at 7:43:49, again, officers arrived on scene. Again, this was not an uncontrolled event. They gathered together. They came up with a methodical and systematic tactical plan on what they would do, what tools they would use. They actually made contact and gave orders to the individual to show his hands. You will see in this next video, which will be played in just a second here, again, he actually leaves the business, goes out onto the island, and is basically in a waiting posture for those officers to respond. The officers actually responded on the far side of the building and got together, formulated this plan, and then they moved up on the individual at that island to make sure that they could exploit their tactics, make sure that they could exploit their surroundings, making sure that they had the opportunity to do an intervention with that individual as opposed to just driving up and getting right in the middle of something that they were not prepared for. So what you're going to see on the next tape is that actually unfolding. Then you see the individual who actually chases, moves quickly and rapidly and almost basically chases the officers, and a 40mm is fired, which is a less lethal tool. And while he's working through the glitch in the video, I want to actually talk a little bit about what a 40 millimeter is. Again, in law enforcement, we often throw out terminology and tools, and we have the expectation that people understand, but it's imperative that people do, because this is the tool that was used, or a tool similar that was used on that night. And what it is, it's a 40 millimeter launcher. It shoots out a projectile. This is what the round itself looks like. It comes into the tubes and the placement of the magazine of the weapon itself. The projectile is a hard rubber substance. And when it gets expended, it uses kinetic energy, which is basically the force of the action itself that strikes the individual. What we know now, again, we are still in the investigative process, so we know that this tool was fired. I don't know specifically on the number, but we know that on the ones that were fired, made contact with our suspect. And as you're going to see, even after this tool was fired, which is an incredible less lethal tool, it still did not change the dynamics of the actions of our suspect. It actually increased his pace. He actually then began to chase our officers around the corner. And let's see if we got that working now. As we wait and see if it happens, again, I'm going to explain to you what you see. Up on the corner up here on the island, you see the suspect. He is blocked out or blurred. Around the corner at the very end, you see the officers peeking around the side of the building. The officers come up, approach. They make sure that individuals who are in the area are safe. They approach the suspect who's standing on the island. They verbalize with that suspect again. Let me see your hands, see your hands. At that time, the suspect leaves the island and begins to chase after our officers. And Joe, do you think we can get that up and going, or is that something we're going to skip?
I'm not sure why it's stuck, Chief.
All right, can you go to the next one, and then we'll come back to that one maybe. So after that event occurred, again, what you'll see is the officers repositions. They moved around a corner of the business to get distance and cover. The suspect, again, actually chases the officers. One officer, as he is moving backwards, the suspect runs up on him with his hands, and you can still see it in the video. He'll run up on the officer, and he actually has his hands secreted into his jacket, where again, to recall, when he called Aurora 911, he made specific statements that the 9mm pistol was in his jacket or in his hoodie area. And we'll see if that video plays. This is the body-worn video from the officers.
Ready? You guys looking?
Hold on.
Hey! Come here. Move.
On the northwest corner.
Ready? Yeah. Rifle on your command. Hey, hands! Go ahead. Show us your hands! Now! Let me see your hands!
And that's where it stops. So again, I don't know if we can go back, Joe, and I'm going to have you see if you can go back one more time if you can, because I really want that to be clear and open up to everybody.
It's going
Can
now.
that be played?
It's going now.
Again, this is from the mesh cam that was out there. You see the officers approaching. The suspect is moving now towards the officers. The 40mm round that I explained to you is being deployed. The suspect then actually goes into a full run, chasing the officers who flee or retreat around the corner. As he does so, he approaches the one officer with his hand still secreted inside of his jacket, at which time the officer fires the rounds. So again, that is what we are looking at. As this event unfolded, again, we're looking at factual information that we know at the time, and what we know now is that this is a tragedy. And again, I'm going to say this in exactly the same way I started this. This is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that the officers had to respond to this. It's a tragedy that our suspect made those calls and that contact. The one thing that is also factually clear is that the officers of the Aurora Police Department did what they had to do in this event. They did not start this event. They did not initiate the call. Our suspect did. When our officers arrived, they were not lackadaisical in how they approached this event. They were incredibly methodical in what they did, how they acted, and what they said. When you think of de-escalation and what de-escalation means, again, it's a multitude of things. It's about positioning. It's about awareness of what's occurring in and around. It's about the time that you give for something to unfold. It's about the resources. It's about your options and your legality, what is expected and what's not expected. And I really want to stress into all of this conversation, again, the time frame that this unfortunate event occurred in. From the time the officers first made contact with the suspect to the time that the suspect charged around the corner and hit up the officers, it was 15 seconds. In 15 seconds, the officers repositioned, the officers gave verbalization, the officers gave awareness, the officers used resources, the resources that I mentioned earlier, which involved the less lethal, the 40 millimeter. The officers, again, exploited everything that they could possibly exploit based upon the situation that unfolded with them in front of them in 15 seconds. So again, as this event is being investigated, I want to make sure that the community, I want to make sure that everybody is aware that we will provide all information that's available, that's factual, and that's relevant. As I stated at the beginning of this conversation, the 18th Judicial District Critical Incident Response Team is doing the independent investigation. Again, I think that's also very important. This is not an investigation that's being conducted, as all our officer-involved shootings, by Aurora personnel. This is being conducted outside. Aurora Police Department, as I mentioned earlier, will look at the internal investigation about what happened administratively. What was sound, what was not sound, what was good, what was not that good, what was indifferent. So with that, I would like to go ahead and open it up to any questions that anybody has at this time.
Chief, how many times did that officer fire and how many times was the suspect hit?
Yeah, again, and right now, that is still something that's going to have to be confirmed by the officer's interview. He has not been interviewed yet. We can look at the tape, we can hear the tape, but I don't want to give out the specific rounds until that officer articulates out to that investigative board what he did or did not do. I don't want to set any parameters in front that could compromise or change the investigation or the interview. But what we do know is that the rounds that were fired, that we believe were fired, definitely made contact with the suspect. And as you could see in that video, had absolutely no impact whatsoever. It actually increased his dynamic charge towards our personnel.
Chief, sometimes you show when the actual shots are fired. You're not showing those today. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not showing it in the press conference, but again, all this information, the one thing is important about this, and thank you for that, because I do want to bring clarity to that. The important aspect about this is that we met with the family on Monday and Tuesday. They actually got the link. We cannot release any videos, no matter what they are, any audio, until the family gets a chance to view it, and then we get 72 hours. So that 72 hours expired about 2 hours ago. So again, for the press conference purposes, we went up to the point of contact with the officer and with the suspect, but you can link into it. Anybody in the community can link into it and get the complete shooting all the way to conclusion, all the way until I mentioned earlier about the officers providing life measures. Those are also visible. So all that information is there. For the press conference, I cut it here.
Chief, did the...
Yes, sir.
Chief, has Aurora PD expanded their array of non-lethal being used? What was the thought of using a 40 millimeter launcher?
Yeah, and again, I'm incredibly thankful that we have. The 40 millimeter tool, again, it's in law enforcement. It's something that's been used for many years. Aurora PD did have the 40 millimeter in years prior, but what we didn't have up until about 6, 7, 8 months ago was this in patrol assets. And so we purchased a whole load of 40 millimeter rounds of the weapons system itself. And again, we now have those in almost all, or at least many, of our patrol vehicles. So again, this is an incredibly important tool. We hope that it decreases our limited number of officer-involved shootings. We hope that it decreases some of the contexts where our officers have to use force beyond this. And again, that's what we're hoping for. But the one thing that's important about this tool, and I think is so important about what those officers did that night, is that, again, it was methodical. It was very tactical. They didn't just randomly pull up and get in over their heads. In that brief period of time, based upon the severity of that call, and that's something I really want to put out too, is that call was a severe call. That call was not a call of, hey, we got a guy who's acting strange out in front of our buildings. That call was a call from the suspect himself, who said that he was going to commit an active shooting situation that could have involved any community member in the city of Aurora or anybody in this metropolitan area. He said he had a gun, he said he had the intent, and he said what he was going to do specifically. And again, when you look at active shooting situations, when you look at mass shooting situations, that is what you are dealing with. And so these officers, even faced with those circumstances, stepped into that void, prepared, planned, took the logistics that they felt would have the biggest impact to resolve this, hopefully peacefully, and yet all that, again, based upon the actions of the suspect, unfortunately had to result in an OIS.
In a situation, Chief, with somebody calling and reporting themselves essentially, was there any consideration of some form of crisis negotiation? And if not, why not?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We, without question, are full believers in the Aurora Police Department in crisis negotiations, crisis response teams. We actually had 2 units that were responding to that, along with the other calls. But I want to be very, very crystal clear on this. This was not a call based upon somebody who was in mental crisis. This was a call based on an individual who said that he was going to commit mass shootings and mass violence. The difference for that a lot of people don't understand, again, and I'll use an example that occurred this week as a matter of fact. I was listening to the air and I heard a radio call got dispatched, and a woman who lives with her roommate said, hey, my roommate is depressed. She won't come out of her room. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't slept. She's talking about self-harm and some other issues. That is a call where crisis response teams goes to. There is no criminal actions. There is no violence connected to it. It was somebody who is experiencing mental health issues. This was a call that there may be underlying circumstances of mental health, and I believe that there are underlying circumstances of mental health. But that's not how this call was initiated. It's not how it was aired. And so again, this call came out as an individual who was going to conduct violence. And so that's really the hard balance in law enforcement, because we could have waited. We could have said, hey, let's get crisis response. We think this may be that. But again, that's when you have a lot of the immediate action, active shooter type situations that occur far too often. And that very well could have been the situation that would have happened if we would have waited. And so what we did do, and what this organization did, and what those officers did individually, is they came up with a concise plan. They are trained also in crisis intervention. Every member of our organization goes through a suicide by cop training. They go through a communication training. They go through an emotional intelligence training. They understand of de-escalation. So all of that stuff is part of what they have in their toolkit. All of that was exploited. All of that was used. And again, that's always going to be the question, is how do you balance that out? Well, I think in the environment of active shooters, I think in the environment of seeing too many innocent victims killed, I think that is the weight and the yoke that law enforcement takes. And there's one thing I want to bring up about this. There's a document that's out there, and again, it's really an important one. It's National Threat Assessment Centers through the Secret Service. And many of the active shooters, again, that are involved in this, when you look at mass shooting situations across the nation, many of them are acts of suicide. They plan to die. They don't plan to give up. And they are actively involved in shootings. They are actively involved in the victimization of other people. And when you think of active shooters and you think of that commitment, again, that is what officers have to respond to. All this individual would have had to have done to stop was just to listen to the officers for 1 second and show his hands. And if they would have been able to have anything longer than 15 seconds, I guarantee you that that dialogue would have changed. It would have said, hey, what's going on today? Why are we here? What can we do for you? That opportunity was not, unfortunately, given to those officers based upon the actions of the suspect. And the actions of the suspects that they knew and that they were dealing with was that they had an individual who said he was armed, very specific about the weapon that he had, a 9mm pistol, very specific about where he had it, and very specific about his intent to shoot other people and then to shoot police as they came. And in that 15-second period, they had to digest all that information, utilize these tools, utilize that communication to try to address that situation. So I know I spent a lot of time talking about that, but this was not a crisis response call. This was a call based on violence, or the perception that violence was going to occur.
Just a quick follow on that, Chief. Considering the call, he specifically says, "I want to shoot at police." Were any of those conversations, did it come up, the approach of having the first contact with him be different personnel than officers, knowing that he may turn violent as soon as he saw officers arrive?
Yeah, and again, that's another part we have. We have clinicians that go out with our crisis response teams. They're a part of that program as well, but again, they are not for calls that involved active violence or the threat of active violence. And that's what this call was. This call was not a mental health call. This was not a call where he said, "Hey, I'm despondent, I'm going to sit here on this island, and when people come up, I'm going to kill myself," or "I don't want to live." That wasn't the narrative that he gave. Like many other cases involving active shooters, and I mean active shooters that actually follow through and cause carnage and death that we have seen way too recently in this country and in this state and in this community. He didn't say that, "Hey, I'm just going through some trouble." He said that he was going to kill people and he was going to kill officers. So having the opportunity to get somebody else to go up there and start that wasn't even given at the groundwork or the foundation of what he said. He was incredibly articulate of what he wanted to do, the violence he wanted to do, and the response that he wanted. It's tragic. There is no getting around it. But again, he set into motion that particular aspect of what occurred.
Chief, as you implied
Hold on.
earlier.
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear it in the video, but can I assume that they asked him to take his hands out, or his hand out of his pocket?
Yes, and again, when you link the video, that's exactly what you're going to see. You're going to see the officers, the first contact they make with him as he's at that island is, "Let me see your hands, let me see your hands. Get down, and the suspect immediately charges at him. So that verbalization was pivotal as far as the discussion and as far as the process that they did in that 15 seconds. Yes, ma'am.
As you implied earlier, this is like, it looks like a textbook suicide by cop. Is the police department trained for this? And if so, did you follow protocol and did dispatch follow protocol in that?
Yeah. And again, as I mentioned earlier with the other discussion, again, this is something that we, without question, adhere to our policy and procedure. And as a matter of fact, I have our policy and our procedure, and one of the statements that it makes here is that calls involving our CRT team, again, they will be predominantly behavioral health in nature with a secondary criminal component, which basically means that if there is a criminal component, if there is a violence component related to this, which again, that's what there was. It was a call that it was going to be a mass shooting, not a call that I'm having a rough time. So again, our officers responded believing that they were going to be driving into an immediate action, rapid deployment, mass shooting situation. When they made contact with that suspect, again, they verbalized. They are trained on verbalization. They are trained on suicide by police officer. They are trained in communications aspects related to that. But again, that was not able to unfold based upon the fact that the suspect, in a 15-second period, charged at the officers after all of those things were exploited, after tactical tools were exploited, after less lethal was exploited, and still did not deter him.
In textbook suicide by cop, typically they will say that they have a gun or a weapon and they actually do not. That's pretty standard. Do you have actual protocols specifically for suicide by cop that's not like a CRT response?
Yeah, and I mentioned that already. We do have training. So our officers go through training on suicide by police officers. They also go through communication on crisis intervention. The tools that we just talked about, those are specifically used to de-escalate situations like this and other similar incidences. And so again, when you look at that suicide by police thing, and again, you're very specific on it, and you're right. There's multiple ways that unfolds. There's disturbed intervention, which happens for about 56% of the cases. There's direct confrontation, which happens for about 28%. And there's also criminal intervention, which happens for about 16% on suicide by police officers. Again, that's statistical information from the FBI as well as from the Secret Service. The important part about all of that, though, is it has to be in conjunction with the suspect willing to have that intervention component, being willing to stop his actions long enough for the officers to assess what is occurring and what's not occurring, being willing to be able to say that, yes, I do not have a gun that's going to kill you, I do not have a gun that's going to kill other people in and around this area. Unfortunately, again, with this incident, when you look at suicide by cop or you look at this as any event, that is not how this started. This incident started with an individual calling up and saying that I am going to commit mass shootings. I am going to kill multiple people, and then I'm going to kill police officers. We have countless incidences across the nation, across the state, where those same types of verbiages and words were used, where that act actually occurred. And again, I think had there been remiss by our officers to respond to that and that incident, that there is still no clarity about if that actually would have occurred, then we would be asking a lot of different questions. How come you didn't respond to that immediate action rapid deployment? How come you waited and got somebody who is a clinician to come and talk to somebody who is talking about mass shootings and violence? Again, in hindsight, everything is going to be crystal clear. Being able to look at it and say, hey, I understand that, yeah, now I get it. But at the moment, which is how cases are evaluated, based upon the United States Supreme Court in Graham versus Connor, which is based upon objectable reasonableness of the facts that are known at the time and not at hindsight, the officers believed and felt, and again, I am not getting into what they are going to articulate out into their interview, but I am looking at what I am seeing on video, is that those officers were responding to an active shooter call. They were not responding to somebody in mental health crisis. Any other questions? Sir?
That tool there, do you consider that the most effective, less lethal tool that you have? And why was that chosen over a taser or another tool similar?
Yeah, I think, again, the best part about this tool and why the Aurora Police Department is moving so strongly into these is the distance. A taser, you're limited to 15 feet. For OC spray, again, you're 15 feet. This gives us the opportunity to shoot at a much greater distance to stop the threat, to change the dynamics of that individual, and hopefully take him into custody peacefully.
And just real quick follow-up, seeing that the suspect appears to be struck, but it did not deter him, does that change your thinking at all about how to use this and how effective it is?
No, I don't think anything is a panacea when you're dealing with somebody in this situation. Again, whether it's through rage, whether it's through violence, whether it's through mental health, whether it's through substance abuse or misuse, again, these are just tools that we have that will hopefully impact and change the dynamics. But again, there is no lethal tool, no less lethal tool that is going to have the exact same impact, the exact same way every single time. But the ability to have these things and to hopefully de-escalate is absolutely pivotal. Ma'am, you had a question?
Did the family provide any insight into the suspect's recent state of mind or mental history that may be able to sort of explain his actions?
You know, that's still going to come out in the investigation, but from what we do have as far as conversations, it's been challenging. Our detective personnel, our bureau chief in investigations, again, has had contact with the family. This individual was not residing with the family at the time. He was actually in a halfway house or another facility that he walked away from. I don't know all the circumstances or the dynamics, and I won't even begin to say that. What the dynamics were in that family or what occurred, but that's what we know at this point.
Chief, there was another shooting just under 3 weeks prior to this incident involving another one of your officers. Now we understand that very well-known attorney Bancroft is involved in that, placing somewhat a national focus on APD. As the chief, how do you feel? And is that expected to prompt any sort of action in terms of reviewing protocol and maybe changing the way things are done in these situations?
Yeah, you know, and again, that is a really interesting question, and I think it really deserves discussion because each incident, again, even if it's close in time, is based on its own merits and its own actions of what occurred. And I think that the two of these incidents that we've experienced recently, there are similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. On the incident that occurred up on 6th Street again, that was initiated because of a traffic stop. The suspect fled the officers. that suspect, he drastically and dramatically crashed his vehicle into another community member that was just at that intersection, causing his vehicle to go up off of the air across the intersection. That individual in that case, he actually didn't listen to officers. He did not adhere to any commands that were given. He actually took a stolen gun that we now confirmed was stolen. He threw it into the bushes. He then turned on the officer while he was asking individuals in and around him to get that weapon, pick it back up so that he could probably cause harm to the officers or other community members. The officers responded to that based upon what they knew at that time. So again, that's the similarities, some of the aspects of that. On the Havana Street one, again, it's different. We have an individual who he decided he was going to call the police. He was going to make the allegations that he was going to be involved in a mass shooting situation. He made the determination to say that he had a pistol in his jacket. He claimed he had a loaded weapon. He threatened mass violence. When contacted, he concealed his hand in his pocket. He ignored commands. He said that the firearm, again, he was going to use and threaten officers. In both cases, and again, when you talk about policy and procedures, something that we constantly look at and something that we review at, but in both of these cases, whether people like it or not, the suspect's actions created these rapid, evolving, life-threatening situations. This was not something that our officers wanted to do on either one of these. Our officers on the 6th Street event was doing traffic enforcement when this individual who was going to get stopped didn't stop, ran into another car, and then went through that violent tirade that he went through. And again, that individual on 6th Street, also the difference is he had a violent criminal history, which included spousal abuse, domestic violence, adult abuse, crimes of violence, things that, again, he understood. The things that are different on this one is this individual did not. This individual had no record. So although there are similarities, there are also a lot of differences. And I think that is something, again, that you have to put into context, is that on both of these cases, our officers did not want to be put into that situation. Our officers did not want to kill an individual on 6th Street who, again, after repeated attempts to stop his actions, not ask other people to pick up a weapon, not to turn on an officer and confront him with his fist raised, push him into the middle of the intersection, did not want to get involved in a shooting. On this event, our officers did not want to go and get involved in this shooting. That was requested on behalf of the suspect who started this whole process, who made those claims, who talked about the violence he was going to commit to other people, who talked about the fact he had a weapon, who talked about the fact that he was going to shoot officers. And even with all of that information on both of these incidences that you were referring to, our officers exploited de-escalation. Our officers exploited communication. Our officers attempted to exploit other tools and alternatives other than lethal force. Unfortunately, on both of these incidences, the suspect and the suspects did not allow that to occur. That is not something that is unknown. That is factual data, that is factual information that we have seen through the collection of evidence at this point in both of these investigations.
Chief, this Havana Street incident, will the 3 officers be on administrative leave through the course of the DA investigation, or is there a chance they'll return before?
No, what we're doing and what's been consistent, again, as they get interviewed and as the more information becomes available, the determination, and I'll make that determination on what particular job or role they take. That could be back to full patrol, it could be based on an administrative assignment, or it could be based on assigned to home. So again, that's an evolving process as the investigation continues to unfold. Yes?
So once again, sorry, but if this was more of a textbook suicide by a police officer, it also seems like even Rajon Stubblefield and Rashad Johnson both had incidences where they also looked like it was a suicide by cop incident where it evolved into that. Is there a possibility that maybe the APD would consider updating protocols to be more specific for incidents like this?
And again, I'm going to be clear, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but is this a textbook suicide by cop incident?
Yes, it definitely is. It goes exactly.
And the other ones are too? You have that
Not the
information, you have the
other ones.
completed investigation, you have gone through the CERT
No, I
reviews?
definitely looked into them, and there are aspects about it that they do seem like they're two different situations. This one is textbook. The other one, it seems like they didn't intend to go into it in that manner, but it did end up in that manner with the aggression toward.
And again, as I articulated out through this entire duration, the investigation is going to continue to unfold. We are going to get more facts. Based upon what we know right now, the officers adhered to all policies and procedures. Those policies and procedures are in place for a very specific reason, to make sure that, again, the community is safe, to make sure that they are safe, and make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to save lives. The actions of the suspects dictate what our officers have to do. Again, I don't think any situation is going to be perfect, especially when you're dealing with situations like this. But as far as modifications, that is something we always look at and always think about. I think the addition to tools like this is an example of that. But again, what I look at and what I hope for is that the investigation will be concluded. We will get additional facts and information. Unfortunately, on many of those things, the one thing that's really missing is we don't get to interview the actual suspects. We don't get to find out what was in their mind, what was in their head. We have to go on information based upon what they did, what their actions were, and what we saw, and what our officers responded to. Anything else?
Was there toxicology on either one or both?
There will be toxicology on every officer-involved shooting, every situation like that. And then, ma'am, you have the last question.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. You said that the suspect was not armed.
That's correct.
Okay.
He was not armed.
Chief, you said he called from a business, is that right?
He
you
did.
go inside the business and use a business phone? Is
He
that
did.
what you said?
Yep. He actually went into the Conoco gas station and used that phone.
And that's where I think you said previously that the owner locked himself in to protect himself.
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
And there's one thing I want to throw out too, because again, you bring up different items and different issues related to officer-involved shootings. And I want to be very clear about what this department does and how important this aspect is to us and how much we track it and how much we focus on it. In 2024, on our officer-involved shootings, we had a total of 5 officer-involved shootings. Those officer-involved shootings occurred with over 257,053 calls for service. So we had 257,000 individuals and community members in the city of Aurora call the Aurora Police Department and ask for response because they couldn't handle a situation, because they were getting victimized, because they were getting mistreated. Out of all those 257,000 calls, there was 5 OISs, each of them tragic. There's no getting around it. That comes out to a 0.002% in calls compared to OISs. In 2025, year to date, where we are at, we have 4 officer-involved shootings, and that is out of, right now, year to date, 151,474 calls for service. That again comes out to a 0.002% number of incidences compared to calls for service. And so that to me is incredibly important. Each incident is tragic. Each incident is unfortunate. Each incident impacts every single person involved in it, and there's no getting around it. There is absolutely no getting around it. It impacts the suspects, it impacts the family, it impacts the community, and it also impacts our officers. None of these officers want to get involved in those situations, but that's what they do. That's what their role is. That's what they're here for. They're here to serve. And they are using every tool, every opportunity, everything that they are trained to do the best job that they possibly can in some incredibly, incredibly complex situations that I guarantee you probably none of you would ever step into, and the majority of the population of this country would never step into. And so when I see people second guessing, when I see people looking at it, I think that's important. I think that the community has to have that opportunity. We have to have that trust. We have to have that flexibility to continually analyze and look at and see how we can improve things. But this, unfortunately, is an incredibly, incredibly challenging job that only few people do. And the scrutiny, it's needed. And we will never push away from that scrutiny. The investigation, it's needed. And we will always embrace that. But I am also, as the chief of police of this organization and as a member of law enforcement in this nation, willing to tell you that you have individuals that step into incredibly complex situations that very, very few others will. And these officers, based upon their experience, based upon their knowledge, based upon what they know, based upon the tools and the tactics that are supplied to them, will hopefully get better at each situation. But I want to leave you with this. Again, in all these situations that we talk about, none of these were generated by the officers. These were generated by the suspects. These suspects have opportunities. These suspects have mental prowess to make decisions about what they do or what they don't do. They have the opportunity numerous times to stop and rethink and to change their dynamic. What they unfortunately don't do is the things that the officers ask. And when that happens, that's when incredibly bad things happen to everybody involved. And so again, I stand by where we are at procedurally. I stand by our policies. I stand by what these personnel did at this time. Again, as more information evolves, as the investigation continues, we will get more factual data that will help that process. But right now, what I'm looking at factually, what we are dealing with, whether it's something that is pre-planned, whether it's something that's spontaneous, whether it's something that's based on substance abuse, mental health issues, again, the myriad of things that officers have to address and deal with. Right now, these are the facts that we know what these officers were confronted with that night. These are the facts that we know that occurred. These are the facts we know that the suspect was involved with. These are the facts that we are presenting to the community so that, again, they can make a rational and clear decision based upon what they see and the information. Again, I hope it's reviewed. I hope it's digested. I hope it's understood. And I look forward to the process to continue. And again, I want to end it with this. This is not something that's awesome to get up here and talk about. This is not something that's a great event. This is a tragedy. And unfortunately, that's what law enforcement has to respond to, is events like this. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for being part of this.